Okay, folk, what I was doing there, I didn't want to talk while I was doing it because I wanted to get it done quickly. If you're thinking this looks like winter and not beekeeping weather, you'd be right. It's right at 32 degrees today, but the only reason I was in the hive is because we were having a bit of a bee emergency. Late yesterday, the air temperature actually had got up to just above freezing in the sun. Well, the thermometer directly in the sun was reading 33 degrees, so the air temperature was not above freezing. But it was the warmest and sunniest with no wind that we'd had in about 5 months since I closed up the beehives. And I knew we're getting toward spring on a calendar, not obviously spring as far as the actual weather is concerned. And I thought I'd better take a check on the hives. As you guys have seen in the other updates, I know they're alive because I've seen bees coming and going from the entrance, but I had not seen inside at all since the video I did last fall about winterizing the hives, etc. So I took a peek. I'm really glad I did. That hive over there was looking pretty good. There was almost as many bees as there was 5 months ago, which means they've raised at least one full cycle of baby bees for this spring, because most of the adults from 5 months ago would be dead by now. I saw a teeny bit of larvae, a teeny bit of capped cells. I did not see any new eggs, but I'm hoping it was because I was hurrying and the brood comb in there is really dark, so it's really hard to spot, especially through the bee veil, which I was wearing just because I wanted to be able to move really efficiently and not worried about a half-cold bee getting pinched in my hair or something. It's really hard to see, so I'm hoping there was some little eggs in there, even though I did not see any. They had mostly, so the long side of the hive faces the sunshine. They had mostly eaten the honey on their frames up toward the top and all empty on the one side, and there was kind of a triangular corner left on the cold side. There was, I think, enough honey left in there, but not excessive amounts. So all those frames with the triangle left, I flipped so that the honey would now be on the warm side and a little easier to eat. And as you can just see, I gave them some supplemental food because there's like, I don't know, probably at least 50,000 bees in there right now. I hear one buzzing around me now. Must have just warmed up a little. And I don't want them to starve because, as you can see looking around me, we are a long way out from them having anything to forage out here. It's been below zero most of the time up until now, or below zero a lot of the time, below freezing almost the entire time for 5 months. But they're doing well. They've raised bees. They still have some food in there. I put some more in. If you're wondering about the reason you don't see me using any smoke here from a smoker, I don't know if it's just a particular personality thing or what, but these bees, one of which is the daughter colony of the other, just don't seem to like being smoked. I started out doing that last summer when I was handling them, and they seem to get more upset and wound up with smoke than if I just tried to handle them carefully. This is sped up, so I'm not moving this fast, actually, and they seemed very calm without it. So I've just not been using it for now. I was wearing the bee suit, but I didn't. You can kind of hear when a bee is trying to sting you, even if they can't get through the suit. And I didn't even with either colony find any bee attempting to sting me. So they seem pretty relaxed. But if you're wondering about the smoke, that's what is going on there. The hive over here, the second one, I'm really glad I looked at them because they were basically out of food. They were down to the last few honey cells. They'd eaten everything. Again, it's really full of bees. I saw larvae of all ages, I saw some cap cells, and I saw 2 frames of new little eggs. So they are for sure very active in there, but they were basically out of food. And both hives had about the same amount when I went to, you know, close them up for the fall. So last night gave them, I have one honey feeder, which was an oversight on my part. I should have had more of those on hand before this time of year. Still learning. That's why I want to share these, so that you guys can learn from my mistakes. With more than one hive, I should have definitely had more than one of those on hand. So I poured some of their honey that was inside and therefore warm into that feeder and put it in there last night. And then I took a couple empty frames out of both hives, and overnight I poured some more of the warm honey in, just kind of drizzled it onto the surface of one side of the comb. I laid them flat on a tray so anything that dripped through would be caught, and I let that kind of seep in the warmth inside overnight. And then this morning I set them outside so they would firm up a little better, and then I just put 2 of those kind of, as the box is long this way, towards each side of both hives, so they'll have a little extra. I put the ones with the most honey in that hive because it had the least. So both hives are doing really strong. This is the good news. Both hives are doing really strong. Both must have active queens because they've raised whole new batches of bees for the spring. And if it was spring, like it is in most places, even most cold places by now, I could say it's spring and our bees have survived and they're thriving. As it is, I can say it's late winter, and so far our bees have survived and they're thriving, but they're almost out of food. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and what I'm thinking that I will try next year, but that's where we're at right now. So I figured I better come inside because it was getting a little breezy out there. I know that makes that hard to hear. So, like I said, we got good news. Bees thriving. Bad news is, it isn't spring here. It isn't likely to be spring of the variety that includes anything for bees to forage for a while. If you watched our recent snow video, you know we've been having about normal snowpack, but well below average temperatures. So again, that's good news. We have both colonies so far survive almost 5 consecutive months of below average temperatures in one of the places that's already on average one of the coldest spots in the lower 48. So that's all really good, but they are going to need some more food to get them through until there's something for them to feed themselves on. The snowpack out there is still waist deep to me. There's not even a hint of anything growing, etc. So do I wish I'd left them more honey last fall? I'm not entirely sure. They're going to need some more, but everything I have ever read, including from cold climates, is that if you leave too much honey in there, it becomes kind of a cold sink, it can mold, it can actually cool the colony down, and it's not generally, you know, it's not helpful. And the bees will be balled up, and they can't, if it's really cold, even if there's another honey frame here and here and here, they can't get to it because it's too cold to move over. And so they'll starve to death right here, even if you leave more there. That's why I took out the amount that I did. What I think I will do in the future, because here's the other thing I found. When I looked in those hives yesterday, late afternoon, I brought one of the ladies in with me. I'm sorry. I know you don't want to be in here. Pick a window to sit on and I'll let you out. Just don't get stuck in my hair. She must have been cold on my suit. I thought I waited outside long enough for all of them to have flown off. Now she's warmed up in here. Okay, now I've let 3 honey ladies back outside. I think that's all of them. Let me just start over. I may have to cut the editing on this because I can't remember what I said. The air temperature is still below freezing. It had been below 0 that night before. It was 8 below the night before that. So in other words, the temperatures had been really cold. And when I opened up the hive, instead of finding the bees all still clustered, they were active from edge to edge, side to side, top to bottom, in the entire hive box. In the hive that was hungry, they'd even gone under the little air gap under the divider board and were active on both sides of the divider board. So they were moving freely in the hive in those temperatures. So knowing that our hives, that even in the extreme cold we have had, are well insulated enough, and it may help some that they also have a black roof and a dark gray painted sides like the rest of our buildings, but that was also on all the buildings, partially for the heat that will soak up when there is any sunshine or light at all. They were able to freely move in the entire hive box. So I think what I will do in the future to hopefully prevent this having to emergency backfeed them something so they don't starve to death till something blooms. And some years we do even here have things that look a little closer to blooming at this time of year. Not blooming, but closer than we do this one. But anyway, I think I will still condense the frames down just about exactly like I did this year, with their brood chamber, the honey over the top of those, a couple spacers on each side full of honey, because that seemed to do well. I mean, I don't have a big sample size, but I got 2 colonies and they both made it through 5 months of record cold with that setup. So I think I'll still do that, put in my divider board if you're picturing my hive box going long ways this way, and then in the empty space on the end, I think I will keep maybe 2 or 3 extra frames full of honey for each, however many active hives I have going into winter, and just not extract them, just set them over there on the cold end so that they're not up against the brood colony, making a heat sink, hopefully, to cool that down too much. But if I get to this time of year, I can quickly peek in there and say, you've used all your honey, you need more, and just grab one of those frames and quickly plop it into that side where it's easy for them to reach, and simplify that. So I think that's my plan of attack for the future, but I think I will still probably set up my fall hive winterization basically exactly like I did this year, because so far, I mean, we're not to spring, but I have a 100% success rate with all my giant sample of size of 2 surviving with that setup through some really record cold and successfully raising new generations of bees. So that's all encouraging. I will also be adjusting based on what I see in there when I opened it up a little bit in my attic on the beehive. So the top of all their bars is here, and then there's a air space all summer is just open with vents coming through it to keep the hive cool, and that worked pretty well. Even when we got to 90 degrees with a black roof and a dark gray box here in the summer. It was only one late afternoon last year that I ever saw like a few bees bearding on the outside of the hive, just a little bit, one late afternoon, like they were hot. So they stayed pretty cool. But in the winter, if you remember, I filled that with a pillowcase full of just loose raw wool to insulate the attic space, which worked well. Where the top of the hive bars touched my attic insulation, they were fine. Where the attic insulation actually touched the black roof, I did get a little mold right like on the pillowcase surface and the inside wood surface right under the metal roof, just because, as Clay pointed out from his building experience, anywhere you touch on an outside layer like that, you will get condensation, you will get mold if it's not a clear vent. So I haven't decided yet how I'll accomplish this, but I will make sure that my attic insulation does not touch, even if there's a little air gap there, that it doesn't actually touch, just more for the longevity of the hive box itself, I think, than anything. So I don't know if I'll get Clay to help me build a little riser that actually lifts my attic up higher so I can put more insulation in and still have a bigger air gap, or if I'll simply be more conscientious and careful about making my pillowcase less full of wool so that it still insulates, but I've got an air gap up above that for some free moving air. And then the one that I'm not sure what caused that, because the one hive had no other mold inside and that was totally out of the bee chamber. Like again, I'm saying that's just for the longevity of the equipment, basically. It only had a little bit right where the pillowcase touched the top of the roof. On the other one, I also saw I was wrong. There's lady number 4 just warmed up. Go find a window. There you go. Good girl. Yeah, you don't want to be in the house, and I don't really want you in here. There she goes. On the other hive, the very back frame, I don't know what all the camera caught. I tried to set it and just do my things as quickly as I could here, so I'll have to get to my editing before I can really see what all it picked up. But the very back side of the back frame that touched the divider board had a little bit of mold where the comb actually contacted the divider board. Again, I think it's only because it was touching. So to prevent that, I may put, I'm not sure, like a frame with mostly empty, not real build out foundation in that last slot so it doesn't touch the divider board, or I may bump the divider board out so instead of being at the top being snug against the last frame, maybe there's a little gap just so that doesn't touch so we don't get mold. Other than that, everything looked really good in the hives. The bees on sunny days have been carrying dead bees out. Those dead bees you saw me scoop out of the bottom of the hive. In the little bit of time I had to inspect them, I didn't see any damage, like nothing that looked like foul brood, nothing that looked like mites, and nothing that looked like, blanking on the thing that makes their wings all curled up. They looked fine, they were just dead. I think some of those build up on the floor of the hive because we have had 2 or 3 week stretches at a time where it's been not only cold but snowing every day, and the bees don't tend to fly at all, so I think nobody could just go do like their pallbearer duty and take their dead friends out at those times, so some of the dead bees built up on the bottom, but that was fine. The hives are designed so there's an air gap under there, so they were just kind of laying on the floor. They weren't in the way. I scooped up some because I wanted to be able to inspect them and see what they look like, see if there's anything going wrong. But as near as I can tell, the 2 colonies are doing well, and hopefully doing some emergency feeding is going to keep them in, well fed until there's something outside for them to harvest for themselves. So if you've been following our bee adventure, there is our early spring, early, or very late winter, whatever you want to call this, lessons learned so far and plans for next year, things to change for going into next winter to hopefully prevent a little bit of what I'm doing now. But so far they're looking good. So that's that.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Come back next time for more adventures.
Thanks for watching.